Hello and welcome to another episode of Women Are the Medicine, the show where we get to share the incredible wisdom of women who have something powerful and impactful the world needs to hear. We are new to podcast land, but if you're enjoying what we've been creating, then please do subscribe. This is great for our rating and it means that you won't miss an episode. So joining me today to offer a dose of medicine is another gorgeous human being whom I would be quite happily stranded on a desert island with. Frances Trussell is a former broadcast journalist turned Zen, mindfulness and non-duality teacher. She's a coach, a therapist and an author of a best-selling book, You Are Not Your Thoughts. She's been a huge support of me and my work over the last 5 years and I am delighted to share her with you. Frances, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Yay! Really good to be here, babes.
Oh, and I don't know, I feel like I need to whisper because you've just been on a silent retreat and I've never done a silent retreat or a Vipassana. What was that like? What was your experience this time? Tell me, I want to know.
So, to put it into context, I have still this morning been crying while doing the washing up and simultaneously laughing. So I don't know how this is all going to go down today. Hopefully I find my words. So it wasn't, there's something that sounds incredibly scary called an Enlightenment Intensive, an EI. And actually there's silence for all the surrounding parts, but there is an element of speaking, but it's not your normal chit chat, darling. It is you're sitting in pairs opposite someone working in dyads, and you are being asked a very deep question, and you are responding to that from a place of truth, and it's pretty bloody hardcore. It goes, you're doing that for like 10 hours a day, that bit, and then it's silence surrounding that. But what we get is these incredible breakthroughs, and it's hard to put into words, really.
Oh, goodness. It sounds
absolutely brilliant,
intense. What on earth comes out? You're saying you're speaking your truth, but so I'm guessing you're not just verbal diarrhea all over someone about some sort of esoteric concept. What are some of the questions that you're being asked, or what are some of the, like, are you happy to share some of this? I'm really curious.
For sure. So we start always with the big question, which is, who am I? And it's absolutely possible for us to get right into direct contact with that truth and speak from there and embody that. So that's kind of where we start. I was working with what am I this time. I've done a lot of these things, actually more than 30 I'd worked out the other day. So I'm obviously either completely bonkers or there really is something there to be explored.
And what are you getting from these? How is this translating into, I don't want to say real world because both are real worlds, but into daily life? I know you've got kids, you've got business, you've got lots of things going on. How do you integrate these experiences and bring them back? What's the value of them and how has it changed your life? If you've done 30 of them, oh my God, Frances.
Well, I always say I'm a slow learner, and actually that is okay because and you're right. What you point to, it's all well and good doing these things and having these experiences, but if they just remain as an experience and you don't integrate them into your life, then what is it all about? And so for me, I can be completely honest. I have struggled at times to integrate the messages that come through, the learnings, the teachings into my life. And so, but there's something within me that draws me back to reconnect to that truth and to want to live it out. And it's been one of the most important kind of guiding forces in my life for sure. And actually, it's nothing to do with little Frances, who, you know, wants to get on and succeed and create all these things. And actually, there's a deeper part of us that longs for this connection. And it's absolutely something that you provide through the psychedelic work. And this is another route into that same deep place that wants to be known and felt and heard and experienced.
I'm so glad you touched on that, because I think we're all seeking that deepness, that depth, that connection with ourselves, with something greater than ourselves. And, you know, people are trying to find the one thing that's going to work for them. And there are so many paths that are interwoven and can join, and you can sort of start on with one method or one route, and then that falls away and another practice comes. What are some of your favorite ways to go deep and get in connection if you're not going on one of these enlightenment intensive retreats?
So I'm really lucky to be able to bring that practice into my life in so many different ways and different practices that I love to explore. But this connection with others, which is why Women in the Medicine is so important, is because having that reflected back to you, being able to actually be supported is so essential. And so I do dyads over Zoom with friends who are also into this type of work, and it's just a way of kind of letting all of those having to show up in a certain way just fall away and drop away, and actually just sit in truth. You kind of, a timer pings, you do 4 minutes and 40 seconds as the speaking partner, and then bringing this beautiful quality of open listening without any need to respond. You're just sitting there witnessing the other person speaking from their truth. And that might sound kind of floaty or woo-woo or whatever, but actually, you know, we're just speaking what is the truth now in this moment as it arises, as a direct result of asking this question. And sometimes it's like, oh my God, I can see all the ways I've been fucking up, and what a nightmare I am. Or like, oh my God, something's happened with the neighbour and they're really fucking me off. Or, you know, and actually sometimes that is the truth of this moment. And for us to be able to fully express that and what is arising without being judged by the person that is witnessing us, it's such a rare and beautiful gift. And also the quality of listening that we develop by really being able to be present for another person without the need to interject or think about what am I going to say in response to this or whatever. This is so beautiful. And for me, going back to what you asked before about how that integrates into my life, it's this quality of the listening that actually really has transformed things for me, as a therapist, but just as a human being, being able to be there and witness another and delight in the depth and breadth of full human experience, not just the good stuff and us having to be like super positive or whatever. Actually, it's all beautiful and it's all welcome, the whole bloody catastrophe, because this is what makes us deeply human.
There's definitely a theme with this with some of the other guests that I've had. So I've had Gemma Brady on, who talks about circles and gatherings and how exactly this, the act of listening and not needing to try and fix or judge, but just being open to receive what this person is sharing. It sounds so unbelievably simple. And yet both you and Gemma and I've been sat in circles, and you can feel it. You can feel something happening to yourself when you are sharing, but also, you're right, when you're listening, there's a real art to this. How do we integrate this into our daily lives? If someone's listening to us and they're like, what's active listening? Like, I really want to help people. If I know the answers to something, I feel like I can help someone to get on the right path. how do we sort of get back in our box, get back in our lane, so to speak? What can we do to kind of not jump in and try and save someone?
Oh, I don't know, Ness. Because there is this energy of both, and it's, you know, this very masculine energy that wants to like take action and fix things, and like, I've got a solution for that. And certainly I can recognize how much masculine energy I have going on, and I have a whole toolbox that I work with clients across a whole spectrum of all different types of therapies that I happen to have trained in, and that's wonderful. And usually there's a tool for something, but actually a lot of the time what we really need is to just be deeply heard and witnessed and recognized, and so it's a path of letting that unfold within ourselves as we learn more and more about ourselves and the other. We don't always have time for that in a therapeutic setting. You know, people want results as quickly as possible, and all that is good, and there is huge change that can happen. But as women, we can really tune into that deeper part of the feminine part of ourselves that can nurture and love without words, without doing, without tools and techniques. And actually, it's so very innate to us that we can hold someone physically and just hold someone in our presence, and that is okay. But actually, you know, that's kind of been trained out of us. Just even looking at when my kids first went off to school so soon, it was like we get into this doing mode, fixing mode, coming up with solutions all of the time. And that's what our little brains were tuned into so early, rather than how can I just allow things to be as they are, and actually what magic already exists within that. Because quite a lot of the time people, they don't need answers from us. Actually, those answers come through themselves, given that space for things to emerge in the way that so beautifully they do when we're allowed to sometimes when speaking from truth, actually what happens is we speak something out and it comes out and we go, actually, that is utter bullshit. And it's only by the speaking of it, rather than it being locked in our head and just kind of like whizzing around doing the loop-de-loop, we speak it out and we go, well, that's absolute crap. And actually, just being held and witnessed without someone chiming in or chipping in, we've come to that understanding deeply within ourselves, and perhaps in a far deeper way than hearing it secondhand through someone else's experience.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. I love that exploration. I definitely think on the fly, and as it's kind of coming out, you're working it out as it's coming out. But if I try to work out in my brain, I get tangled. It's like trying to undo a knot in a piece of wool or a piece of jewelry. It just kind of all gets messy and then can't get it out. But actually having someone witness and just trying to articulate, the articulation piece is so important for our brains and the way that we think. So yeah, I think there's definitely a need for more of this space that feels safe, where you can just let that out and go, actually, that's not the truth. That's nonsense. Why? Actually, yeah, holding up a mirror with no judgment. So let's talk a little bit about you and your medicine, because, you know, I believe, or I think that our medicine comes from our experiences and our pain and the journeys that we've had. And you've had, you know, quite a journey from when you were little. And I just wonder if you would share with our listeners, you know, what's your medicine and where did it come from?
So I was really ill for as long as I could remember. But actually, was I really ill? I was super sensitive. And actually, in our world, we can be made to feel like sensitive, I've got to be like robust and strong, but actually there's a strength in sensitivity. There's a superpower in sensitivity, and one that is not really celebrated so much in the world that we live in. And so I was super sensitive, and I had a lot of questions, big, deep questions about, like, why am I here? Like, just feeling like an alien that had landed from another planet, and like, what is all this about? And there's so much like anger and fear, and so I really suffered terribly with anxiety and depression from being a child. And I think it's really important to kind of acknowledge that. Sadly, now that's so much more common.
Yeah.
Back when I was a kid, not so much. But sadly, what we're seeing now is that so many young people are really suffering and self-harming. I mean, we're seeing it absolutely through the roof. And I'd really like to reassure parents out there of people that are going through this, because it's the hardest thing to witness your child in such a state of suffering. And I'd really like to reassure that actually this can be a superpower. There is a way through it. It's the most horrendous thing when you're going through it, but actually through pain we learn so much. Through breakdown comes breakthrough. And that might sound like a bit of a cliche, but it is so true. Being this open, sensitive, easily injured child that I was actually led me into the most incredible depths of beautiful experience later on. Sadly, for me, I had to go through that pathway of pain, and I have absolutely been, suicidally depressed as a teen and as a young adult. And that has enabled me, through that direct experience, to really be able to help people, because I know, and I know, and I see it and I feel it and I completely understand. And yet there is a better way. And it is through this and through this understanding that we are not these jumble of thoughts in our head. Actually, we are so much bigger and greater than the smallness of thought. And transformation is absolutely possible.
So much in what you said there. And so hard, I just want to say, so hard to witness anyone else that in your life that you love to be going through the pain. I think that's part of our resistance to letting people be on their own journey. Is what is it about other people's pain that we're like, we don't want them to suffer, so we'll try and wrap them in cotton wool and not let them have their journey. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on why it feels like we can handle the pain, but we don't want other people to have to go through that?
It is just so hard as a perspective, as a mother, and I have had lots of friends, colleagues, clients whose children have been going through that kind of pain. And our children are, they are a physical extension of us, and to not be able, all we want to do is to be, as a parent, is if our child is in any kind of pain, it's like, give it to me, give that pain to me instead. I will take this for you, I will carry it. And yet we can't possibly do that. And it's the deepest wound is to not be able to take that on for ourselves. And it's just this inbuilt, innate thing that we have. And I don't want to say, particularly as women, I'm not a man, so I can't speak to that experience. But to me, it feels it's very visceral.
Yeah. Hard, really, really hard to witness other people in pain. And I feel that I'm not a parent, but I have friends who have got wonderful children, and I just see them when something's going on with their child and how torn up they are. So I'd love to offer them your words of support here. What are some of the tools that helped you to go from, suicidal teenager, young adult, to where you are now? What are some of the teachings? What did you come across first? How about that?
What I came across first was meditation and mindfulness, and people might like eye roll at this point. I think we so much oversaturation of the word mindfulness that it kind of loses its it's like saying any word over and over again so many times. It kind of loses its meaning and power. I was so fortunate. I was very, very unwell, and I went off on a retreat. It was at a time in my life when I was working in the media. I had a very high powered, very fancy pants, shoulder pads kind of job. And I was in the loos having panic attacks all the time, and really just like putting on this massive, fabulous act of how wonderful everything was. But actually, really, I was very, very unwell. Deeply unwell, because when we live in a world that actually is fundamentally sick in so many ways, I mean, of course we're going to get unwell at points. And I had a problem with Coke at the time, as in not Diet Cokes at lunchtime, and I probably should have gone to rehab maybe, but anyway, I went on retreat. And it was the most incredible experience. It was my first experience of retreat. I'd done bits of meditation. I'd always enjoyed that laying down, bit of shavasana at the end of a yoga class where I was there to just become more stretchy and again, pushing, different. And to have a direct experience of having my mind full of the present moment without being barraged by all of my wanting and aversion, and to actually really show up to the present and have this. It was like somebody had switched a light on in my head, and everything that had been kind of grey and miserable and, to be honest, fucking boring unless I was high or pissed, was suddenly like bright, full, technicolor, fabulous, juicy, fantastic, through nothing more than choosing to show the hell up to the here and now. And it was so incredibly transformational that it was utter magic. And having seen that, and perhaps many people who are tuning into this will have experienced little glimmers of that. I mean, once you can't unknow that is possible, and that is actually why we are here on this planet having this human experience of life, is this really direct showing up without shame, without judgment, without pushing, without trying to get to the next or the somewhere else, or ruminating on what was already being, just to like really fucking be here. And it is so incredibly simple, yet so incredibly challenging to do, given the setting that we happen to be in.
I love all of that. And I'm like, what kind of retreat did you go on? But I think it almost doesn't even matter, right? Because it came in at exactly the right moment, and it was the container that you needed. What are some of the ways in which we are really making it hard for ourselves to be in the present moment? I know, but if there are things like red flags that we can just give some people to be like, okay, if this is happening in your life, or if you're doing this, or what are some of the ways, and you can talk generally or you can talk specifically about some of the ways you were getting your own life. Obviously, in your own way, you talked about, using substances. But when we don't want to see the truth, we'll brush off the glasses of wine and the party weekends. Oh, it's just a bit of fun. But there's a part of us that knows that there's a distraction there.
There is a distraction, and also not all of it is bad. It's totally understandable that given our current circumstance, we want to get out of our fucking heads. I needed to get out of my head, and we all need to get out of our heads in some way. But actually, we can do that without the aid of any substances, and sometimes substances can be useful. What are the red flags? People know, like. You know, and you know that actually falling into a scrolly hole for however many hours a week that so many of us have a tendency to do, leaves you feeling less rather than more. That the deepest part of you, actually, when are those moments in your life? When are those golden standout moments in your memory of like, whoa, I was really alive in that moment? We know that they are the moment that we bothered to go and like stand and watch a sunrise or a sunset, or like we've gone for a swim in the ocean, or we're just for a split second we're in some water and we've let ourselves float, and there's just a moment of like, whoa, what does this cost us? But actually it's our inattention to all of these little gorgeous pleasures and joys all around us. That is what is costing us. So the quality of our life is in direct correlation with the quality of attention that we bring to what we're doing when we do it. And if we're living a life where we're just on autopilot, then actually we're fucking daydreaming. We are literally sleepwalking our way through life. And I can recognise, like, at all times, and even it's not like I'm some fucking enlightened master. No, I still have like periods. God, if I think last year I probably had 3 months where I was like in a state of sleepwalk, despite my best intentions to be awake. It happens because this voice inside our head is the most incredibly compelling hypnotist we're ever going to find, and it lulls us into this state of sleep that is actually a fucking nightmare. And it's telling us, oh, you need this, and what about this, and comparison and judgment, and actually that is the fucking flag. If we're listening too much to that voice inside our head, and we're feeling the fear, and it's like our body wants us to wake up. So when we're experiencing a lot of pain and anxiety, it's the body knocking and saying, hello, you're going to wake up, you're going to listen to this pain. And when we do, boom, we can come home again to this heaven actually on earth that we are living in.
Oh my God. So much, Frances. There's so many sound bites. It's going to be so awesome trying to pull these out. You actually wrote the book "You Are Not Your Thoughts." What was that process like? What prompted you to write a book about this?
It was actually nothing to do with Frances at all. So I was on maternity leave with my son. I was actually, when I was at the end of my pregnancy, when I'd taken maternity leave, sitting under a tree in my garden, and I am meditating, and then just the urge to write comes. I start writing, I start writing, and then even after he was born, he's just strapped to me half the time. I'm writing and I'm writing and I'm writing. So I'm meditating and writing and nursing a small child, and it just absolutely flew out of me in such a brief period of time. And so historically, I am a writer. I trained broadcast journalist, and for me at the time, it was never about writing a book. I had such an incredible transformation through mindfulness that I felt like, shit, I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose touch with it. And for me, it was as though I was writing this kind of map, so that if I ever lost my way, I'd be able to find my way back in again. And so it was just for me. It wasn't really for anyone else. And then I didn't really do anything with it for ages. Because I was a bit like, at the time I was like, who the hell am I to write a book? Who the hell, all this like self-doubt nonsense. And later, typically, there's an ongoing theme here. When I was on another retreat, a different type of retreat, I'd written some blog posts. I was a mindfulness teacher by then, and I'd written some blog posts, and somebody had come up to me and they'd read some of my writing and said, have you ever written anything else? I love your writing style. And I was like, well, I have written a book a couple of years ago that I didn't do anything with, and she asked me to send it to her, and she used to work in publishing, and within a week I had a publishing deal. So yeah, beautiful. Wow. Serendipity.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really love what you said about you didn't want to, you had this moment, you had this feeling, you had this state, and you didn't want to lose it, because like you say, it's so easy for us to get sucked back into the sleepiness, that the illusion, but I also feel that we can go the other way and we can try and be too spiritual and too like try and get all of like approach our spiritual practice. There's nothing wrong with discipline. I love discipline, but there's something that can be very like, we can apply our masculine linear logical minds to this beautiful practice and art. And I just wonder if you had any thoughts on that, because we kind of see there's a pendulum here.
Yeah. So I don't really see myself as very spiritual at all, which is quite hilarious. Obviously, every 5 minutes I'm off on retreat and whatever, but actually I'm totally normal, me. I'm not one of these woo-woo lot. And there is a pendulum, and what you say really resonates, because at different times in my life, I've been kind of like mega disciplined, and I'm doing like an hour and a half a day without fail and all of this. But actually, we are a process of change in a process of change. That's what we are, and to flow with life and to just not take ourselves too bloody seriously, because actually then spirituality can just be this other hat that we put on. It's just like another form of dress up, and it can be this thing that we like act into, and some of that can come from a really genuine place, but actually end up not being authentic to who we are. And I had a direct experience of this on this most recent retreat that I was on, that actually I had this most enormous breakthrough, not being like in meditation or in a dyad or anything super serious. Actually, we had an integration day and doing some ecstatic dance, which you and I have done together in the past. Wow, within the freedom of just being the dance and allowing yourself to be moved by the music, and like being the full expression of what it is to have a body and how juicy that is. Huge awakening. And so yeah, it's this balance of playfulness, and I think the sign is the moment that we try and take ourselves too seriously in either or, that's the problem, you know, in the, I'm lost in the, oh my God, what about my business and when's the next, or like, oh, I'm so incredibly spiritual. Either of those, the pendulum has swung too far. Actually, be playful. And be playful with your playfulness. And like when you catch yourself, oh, look at me being serious or godlike or whatever.
I love that. And I feel like obviously being in the psychedelic space, those medicines have a really interesting way of showing us when we're taking ourselves too seriously. They can be very playful and obviously deeply profound. I think again they're the full spectrum of our human experience, but another kind of with another kind of flavor. I'd love it if you could share how your experiences with psychedelics have helped you or what they have taught you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was utterly petrified of psychedelics. Not that I was petrified of all drugs, but I think that this is it. Like we can broad brush this term drugs as well. Different drugs, completely different things, completely different experiences. I was a big clubber, so I was like, oh, those are kind of my drugs that I, you know, psychedelics, absolutely not, because of having those experiences of being so poorly and so suicidal, and then having the kind of drug education that we do, that tries to make you incredibly fearful of psychedelics. I was like, oh, I will be the person that has the bad trip and throws themselves out the window or whatever it is. And so I was always incredibly fearful of going down a psychedelic route. However, the science is so undeniably compelling. The studies that we've got coming out of Imperial, just as a therapist and within the therapeutic community, I think we've all had to sit up and take notice of that. And so for me, my psychedelic journey started relatively recently, just in the last couple of years. And in part, coming on retreats with you to be held in such a beautiful and gorgeous way, which I highly recommend to anyone listening or watching. So because of the compelling research coming out, I just had to know for myself. I had to see for myself. And so I feel like I've been incredibly fortunate to experience a set and a setting that has been so appropriate to honour this plant medicine, which I think is so completely different to drugs, or actually honouring the plant medicine, particularly for me, of psilocybin. And something that you had suggested I found really, really helpful on my most recent experience, which was to not only go in with an intention to a journey, but actually to be in communication with the plant. And just the most wonderful, beautiful messages, so clear and so profound and so fabulous. So I've been having lots of physical issues, and so I went into the journey and was talking with the medicine as it worked with me about, what do I need to do to be well? What do I need to do to make better use of this body for this life that I happen to be in? And the messages were loud and clear and profound and beautiful. And I knew coming back after that into my daily life that I needed to make some really big changes. I went and had a series of checks. I ended up having to have some very big operations that needed to happen. And I feel that without that medicine journey, I would still be living with huge discomfort in my body. I'm not fully healed from those operations, but I listened to the message and I'm absolutely getting there. And I know that it was 100% the right thing to do. And so such a profound impact on my life. And it's potentially prolonged my life.
Yes. I think that's what you've just said there is so beautifully apt, that these medicines, whether they're plant medicines or fungi medicines, even some of the synthetic medicines like LSD, they are our allies if we work with them in the right way. And if we do communicate, we're in dialogue with them, there's some really like clear ways that they're able to elicit, they're not like a fortune, like not like a crystal ball, they're not telling us the future, but they're helping us to know what we already know within our body, right? So those messages that you were getting from the psilocybin, you probably already knew, but were like, I'm not going to listen to this because it means that I might have to do X, Y, and Z. Our subconscious is really clever at closing the doors because it wants to, like, I don't want change. I don't want to go and have a big operation. I know that if that route is true, no, that's not in it. And medicine really gently opens those doors for us in a safe way that allows us to receive those messages and to just know. And your journey was, so incredibly powerful. And I think just is an example of how when you work with these medicines, it's not just about trying to find clarity around your gifts and your purpose, which is obviously incredible, but really they can help us to make decisions about our physical health as well. We're just beginning to understand the power of these allies. So thank you for sharing that, Frances.
No, well, thank you for all that you do, because being with you in ceremony and knowing that we were held in such a beautiful, safe, gorgeous space is just the most incredible gift.
Yes. You did keep trying to escape. I did have to come back in, Frances, come back in. But that's part of it, right? The kind of wanting to not.
And recognising the ego, recognising that little Frances thinks that she wants to just do it all on her own. I will do it all on my own, actually. I'm totally fine. I'm going to take myself off, and I don't want to inconvenience. I had this big thing around like, I'm being a pain, I'm being an inconvenience, I'm being and it's just so much of what we do as women, like, oh, I wouldn't want to burden anyone, oh, I wouldn't want to be a trouble, or but rather than just honouring what's arising and just being like, actually, these people are here to support me. And that just came through so loud and clear, like, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. and the ridiculousness around the body stuff, like, in my mind I was like, well, I probably do need to have an operation, but I'm just too busy. It's not the right time now, and it's not just the way that we don't honour ourselves. It's ridiculous. Any one of my loved ones or friends, I'd just be like, just take the fucking time off. Like, your health, your body, your life is the most important thing, of course. But what a dummy.
No, just the conditioning that the patriarchy is very conveniently just, instilled into our DNA as women, that actually we are in communion if we put ourselves first, and we shouldn't do that. And it just is so insidious, right? It's so insidious. And part of this is why I love working with medicine, because it's great at showing us that really, really clearly, like the ridiculousness of certain things. Especially psilocybin. I feel like mushrooms have got a particular personality that's very mischievous, great sense of humour, hilarious. But also, San, I think you're the perfect person to ask about this. Some of my most profound experiences with psychedelics have shown me the oneness of this. I can't even bring it into words. The consciousness that is eminent, omnipotent, that we are part of. But also occasionally it feels so big and so vast that I feel a bit nihilistic about things, like a bit like, oh, but if it's all this big and we're all one, then kind of what's the point? I can sometimes stray into that area. What advice have you got for me? What do other people feel like this? Is this a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that really resonates with me because I have had huge periods where it's like, whoa, like, what's it all about? And that can be incredibly challenging. And yet it's incredibly challenging if the small self, if our little Naz or our little Frances thinks that I am everything, but this little I has to deal with it all on her own. That is where the ego has got back in round the back door and thinks it's us that has to, as a tiny little human, that has to carry the weight of the whole entire universe on her shoulders. And how fucking ego-filled is that? Because actually, we are in this together. We do not need to do this on our own. And that is why women are the medicine. We are the medicine when we work together, when we take each other's hands and say, if I am the universe, if I am everything, then I have also invented you to share this with. And delight in all of the highs and the lows and the pains and the pleasures together. If we try and carry it on our own, it is nihilism. We've squeezed and contracted ourselves into this tiny little point, and we are hard and solid like the hardest rock, and it feels so hard. Actually, if we're feeling like that, expand and expand some more and expand some more, and look at all of these other people we have created to share this bloody experience with, and how fucking fabulous that is.
Oh, so much comfort. I just breathed this big sigh of relief then. And I will definitely be thinking of that the next time I have one of those thoughts of, it's what's the point? It's all too big. It's all too vast and expansive. I will remember you and your...
Well, give me a call, babe.
Yeah, at 2 a.m. Frances! Yes. Let's talk a little bit about impermanence as well. What does it even mean?
We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. And actually, it's part of what makes life so very beautifully precious and rare and incredible, because it has this delicateness to it. And unless we tend to that delicateness, we really miss out on life. And in a way, that's what this whole mindful of now, for mindfulness, is all about, this tending to this delicateness. Recognizing I'm not going to be around forever is absolutely essential to making sure that we live really well, really fully, that we fully show up, that we don't put happiness off into some later destination in the future. Actually, now is the time to be happy. Now is the time to really fucking show up and embrace life, not when we've got more money or with whatever it is. Now. Because none of us know how long we've got. And so this recognition that it's all impermanent, that this precious day is never going to fucking come again. This conversation, this moment, and that there's so much magic in that. And we could get into a whole thing about death, but actually it's part of what makes life so precious. And for me, waking up to that through a series of health things and just through meditation has been so profoundly important to me.
Do you think that because certainly I think in the West, we fear death and we're kind of a little bit like, la, 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 that's not happening. I'm just going to get on with life because life is never ending. But actually, if we changed our relationship to death, it might make us appreciate life more.
Yes. Absolutely, 100% for sure. And many people who have had near-death experiences will say this, that actually coming toward the moment of death, that there's fear, but then actually there's this state of surrender, which is like pure bliss and joy and deliciously gorgeousness. And having spoken to many people who have been through that, this sudden insight that like, oh God, I was making it so fucking complicated when it was really fucking simple. And amazing. And so actually, if we can get more in tune with that, then we have an opportunity to just change the way that we're showing up for our lives.
Yeah, I think especially obviously working in the space with women's coaching, that women are really good at putting off their dreams, their desires until tomorrow for another day. Not even dreams and desires, like you with your example of having your operation, just like, oh, I don't have time for it yet, not yet. And it's so like, it feels it's one of the sort of barriers that we help our clients to break through, is that resistance to going, life is not a fucking rehearsal. You are not an understudy in this incredible production. You're the star of the show, and you're sweeping behind the scenes like Cinderella. Like, put on the ball gown, kick down the fucking door. Let's start.
I love that.
Go on more retreats. Go and find yourself. Yeah, I just, it's such a powerful message and I really hope that women who are listening, and men who are listening, I know there are some men that listen to this as well, because we've got such wisdom, but really just giving ourselves permission to put ourselves under the spotlight, not in an egoic me, it's all about me kind of way. There is a balance, isn't there? There's a kind of humility that you can have, but really this experience is all for us. It's an incredible production, so fucking detailed, unimaginably fine, and yet we're spending time with our little black mirrors, getting sucked in to the complications. Ah, Frances. If people want to work with you, if they're like, I love her, I'm going to get her book, please do get her book. It's an amazing read. We'll put links in the show notes for that. What are some of the ways that people can work with you?
So, because I'm crazy about what on earth is going on here, I have studied so many different approaches. Because also, so first and foremost, I'm a mindfulness teacher. If you've never done a mindfulness course, what? Come and learn with me. It's always my joy and my pleasure to bring you fully and directly into the now. And also, if you are an experienced meditator, but you want to take your practice much deeper and work within the area of Satori Zen, which is insight meditation, to have these breakthroughs. I work with lots of people, be they coaches, therapists, meditation teachers themselves, so people can come and work with me on that. I'm also a therapist, integrative psychotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, rapid transformational therapist, and I use human-given psychotherapy as well. So because we're all so different and we're coming from different angles, and actually when somebody comes to me, I am meeting them where they are, rather than saying, right, I have this hypno whatever that I'm going to do to you. It's actually about me meeting them where they are, depending upon what they've got going on. And quite often people might have tried to access meditation and mindfulness and just not been able, like just not got it, because there's so much fear in the body, that the body's on such high alert that they can't release and let go. And so I work with a lot of people with really terrible anxiety, with fears, with phobias, with trauma, we need to do some stuff around that first to enable them to be able to access this state of presence, because their body is just prohibiting them from being present because there's such fear there. But we can remove those fears and phobias, and it's quite incredible. So what would they do? Just get in touch. We'll leave links, but if you search Frances Trussell or if you search Mindfully Happy, I'll pop up all over the show.
And I highly recommend people following you on Instagram as well. Your little bursts of wisdom are always so colourful. I love your backdrops, but also just so
if you don't like
poignant.
Swearing, babes, don't sign up.
A little bit of a potty mouth and mindfulness. I love that actually you are working with people who are at the beginning of their journey, because actually I think there can be a really tricky space for some coaches who don't necessarily have the depth that you do. So I'm really pleased that you're offering that, and I will certainly be referring people to you, of course. I have a final question for you, my darling, that we ask everyone who comes on the show. If you were made Madam President for the day and you could make any change, you could pass any law and it would never be reversed, what would that be?
Okay, so I have to start with, I did know that this question was coming because obviously I listened to the podcast. So I have to start. So my son suggested that I ask to stay Madam President forever.
That's it. I love how kids' minds work. What would you get if you had 3 wishes? I'd ask for more wishes. The genie in the bottle says no.
And I really think there's some truth to that, because it is so vast and there is so much change that I would like to implement that a day doesn't seem quite enough. But what I would wish for is that every living being on this planet got to directly experience the truth of who they are. And that would truly, it would truly transform this planet. Because actually, once we see that we're not only the same, that we're everything and we're everyone, then why would we hurt another? Why would we not just live and come from this place of love? Because so many of us, when we're coming from the small self, we come through and from fear. And fear is reactive and defensive. And it's painful to come from that place. And all of the terrible things that are happening on this planet are simply coming from fear. They're coming from this place of pain. And to truly know what you are, Faithless said it best, I'm the left eye, you're the right, would it not be madness to fight? And it is fucking madness, it's mental, it's so, but unless we truly know in our being what and who we are, then we're going to come from fear. So
much wisdom, as I knew there would be. I really hope that someone listening to this, or many listening to this, renew a path to going inwards, to seeking that truth. You've inspired me to try some new things, to definitely go on more retreats. I'm like, why am I not going on more retreats? I'm like, for sure. But I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Frances. I knew this was going to be a rich conversation. I could spend hours and hours talking to you. And I really do hope that our paths get to cross in real life very soon, because I would love to give you a hug. But thank you, darling. I love you.
Love you so much.